Chapter 431. Destruction. Dealing with living things, the slaughter sword intent would be enough. Against inanimate objects, the destruction sword intent would be more suitable. The slaughter was to kill living things, while the destruction was to destroy everything, including everything. Throwing out a sword attack, the destruction chi spread out. Under this sword attack, the mental power net was like snow in the spring, melting away. The plants around it withered instantly, as if they had been through hundreds of years. A noise was heard from deep inside the rainforest. Soon, an invisible mental power spear was shot out towards Yi Chen at an unimaginable speed. It went through a huge tree on its way, which did not wither or break. However, that area seemed to have lost a huge amount of substance, turning into powder and collapsing down. However, the speed of the mental power spear did not slow down at all. Facing this, Yi Chen took a turn and held the destruction sword with both of his hands, waving it out easily. Swoosh! The invisible sword light made the rainforest lose its color, as if the colorful world had turned into a black and white one. The sword light sliced through the mental power spear, cutting it into two. More! Sensing his opponent's movement with his soul power, Yi Chen jumped up into the air. After stepping over a couple of huge trees, he threw out a sword attack. This sword attack contained no longer the destruction sword intent, but the immortal sword intent that Yi Chen was good at. As the immortal sword intent condensed into a shapeless sword light, the color in the sky and the earth recovered instantly. The surging mental power seemed to have crushed out all the way, which was even more horrifying than the destruction sword intent. After the destruction came loneliness, and after the immortal sword intent came eternity. That underground human warrior screamed out a couple of times and crazily pushed his mind power, building out layers of mental power defense in front of him. Even then, he was still worried, so he created a thick mental power armor on his body and a mental power shield in his hand. Boom! A horrifying sound came up from the bottom of everyone's heart. The immortal sword light was like a hot knife through butter, cutting through layers of mental power defense and shattering the shield. Eventually, it landed on the mental power armor. The mental power armor kept on repairing itself, but the immortal sword light was like a parasite that would not stop until it reached its target. Its power seemed to be endless as well, crazily tearing apart the mental power armor. Eventually, the mental power armor was shattered, and the immortal sword light rushed into the opponent's soul ocean. Ah! The man let out a blood-curdling scream and fell to the ground without making a sound. His originally robust muscles had completely lost their luster, like dead rotten wood. The rest of the underground humans were stunned. The person who had died was the leader of their team. His will was powerful, and he could be ranked in the top 20 in his race. He could fight 100 people by himself. They never thought that he would die at the hands of an outsider. That outsider made them feel a trace of fear. With a swing of his sword, the outsider had completely destroyed the leader's will defense, and even his soul had been destroyed. The next moment, there was a lot of noise. The underground humans communicated urgently in a language that Yi Chen and the others could not understand. The communication did not last long. In fact, it only took a few blinks of the eye. After the communication, the underground humans retreated in unison, along with the giant dogs with sharp claws and teeth. At least you have some self-awareness. The demon ancestor did not see the battle between Yi Chen and the leader of the subterranean humans, and a cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Master Jade River said, "I didn't expect to see another cultivation civilization in the underground world. I wonder if it's a good thing or a bad thing." The demon ancestor said, "No matter if it's a good thing or a bad thing, as long as they get in my way, they all have to die." Master Jade River chuckled and glanced at Yi Chen. Although he did not see the battle between Yi Chen and the leader of the subterranean humans, his instinct told him that the retreat of the subterranean humans should have something to do with Yi Chen. This made him quite curious about Yi Chen, since an astral-reaching realm warrior was actually able to force the subterranean humans to retreat. No matter what method he used, he should not be underestimated. After a huge battle, there were only 70 people left. Among them, there were 20 people who were wounded, with varying degrees of injuries. Bastard! I did not expect that I, old Lou, would be wounded by a dog one day. How is this still a dog? It is obviously an ancient hunting dog that can help humans hunt beasts and kill large beasts. Let's get out of here quickly. Who knows if they will come back or not. After a huge battle, the surroundings were in ruins, and the smell of blood was extremely heavy, which could easily attract the nearby beasts. The group could not take it anymore, so they left behind dozens of corpses and headed in a certain direction. No one knew how big the rainforest was. There was no sunlight or sky above, and no end in front of them. There was only endless heat and horrifying mosquitoes. The group maintained a constant speed as they opened up a small path in the rainforest. While passing by a huge branch, a poisonous snake disguised as a green leaf attacked Yichin viciously. Its body curled up like a green lightning, its sharp fangs aimed at Yichen's main artery on his neck, trying to bite him. Pap! Without even looking, Yichin lifted up his right hand and flicked his finger, cutting off the snake's head. Look! His tanned body was covered in white fur, and the white bone necklace around his neck was huge. Each of them was no smaller than a child's skull. He moved his mouth, saying something that normal people couldn't understand. Someone next to him laughed evilly. The wavy saint race likes the sacred sacrifice. They will be great offerings. The leader shook his head. As more and more ancient ruins have been discovered, more and more outsiders have entered the underground. This is the third time in the past 10 years. The previous time, which was a year ago, the billowing sacred clan lost a saintess. That's why we, the Greenwood sacred clan, have decided to hunt down all outsiders. Third Master, you are talking about Serenity, right? She is indeed a beauty. Unfortunately, that outsider pretty boy took advantage of her. I don't know what kind of evil spell he used to win Serenity's heart, and brought her out of here. The young generation of the wavy saint race really hates outsiders. Don't look down on the young generation of the outside world. Although their training is different from ours, because of their large numbers, there will always be a king among them. Yes. Let's go. The leader's eyes were gloomy as he glanced at Yichin from dozens of li away, then turned around and entered the rainforest. The lake was endless, looking like a dream. Hearing the sound of the waves, Yichin did not stop paddling. On the left side of the boat, a black light flashed through Murong Qingqing's eyes. She said lightly, "We have been targeted by something. It must be a snake." Yichin answered. Swoosh! Just as Yichin finished speaking, the boat in the front was attacked. 100-meter-long black snake jumped out of the water, opened its mouth, and swallowed an astral-reaching realm warrior. A lot of people with good eyesight could clearly see that the snake had a long beard, which looked like the legendary dragon whiskers. Swoosh! 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 There was more than one black snake with a dragon whisker. They kept jumping out of the water, taking away the people on the boat. Here it comes. Murong Qingqing put down the paddle and raised her arm, grabbing onto a snake that had just jumped out of the water. She then spun her body, sending this huge snake flying miles away, bringing up a huge splash. Dong! All of a sudden, Murong Qingqing's body shook, and the boat under her feet was blown into the air. Let me take care of it. Yichin jumped down, his left hand grabbing onto the edge of the boat. His body was hanging in the air, while his right hand held the destruction sword and threw out a sword attack, cutting towards an even bigger black snake. The black snake's scales were extremely hard, but Yichen's slaughter sword intent was aimed at creatures with flesh and blood. The snake had a sword mark that went through its whole body, dyeing the surface of the lake red. Chapter 432. Feeling the pain, the snake lost all of its power and started to dive into the lake. Meanwhile, the boat had also lost its balance and started to fall from the sky. Right then, another snake broke out of the water and waved its tail. Seeing that the huge boat was about to be cut in half, Yichin reacted quickly and used his left hand to slap the boat away. Boom! Yichin and the boat separated, and the snake's tail went through the gap between them, bringing up huge waves on the surface of the lake. Pap! 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 Taking a deep breath, Yichen lightly stepped on the surface of the lake. He twisted his feet, and a swirling power supported him as he started to run at a fast speed. The destruction sword in his hand sliced across the surface of the water. The swirling power under his feet increased drastically as Yichen jumped into the air and landed a solid sword attack on the snake's neck. Shoo! 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 In the next second, blood splashed out like a heavy rain. The snake had tried to go for wool and come home shorn. Its huge head that was like a carriage had been sliced off, and the cut was smooth and clean. Although Yichen looked so relaxed, it did not mean that everyone else was. Besides the 12 Sea of Souls realm warriors, the rest of them were in a bad shape. Their boats had either been flipped over by the snake or dragged into the water. No one knew if they were still alive or dead. All of a sudden, a huge area of the lake turned dark red, filled with the smell of blood. Hee, take care of yourselves. In here, you guys can die very easily, just like rabbits that could be killed at any second. It was a Sea of Souls realm warrior who had been in the underground world for a couple of days. Without their Jinyuan, everyone's battling power had decreased drastically. However, up until now, not a single Sea of Souls realm warrior had died, which made him think that there was nothing in the underground world that could threaten him. While he was feeling relaxed, he could not help but tease those astral-reaching realm warriors who were risking their lives. Hearing him, some of them made a face. What's so special about it? This underground world is only the tip of the iceberg for us. Who knows how big it is and how dangerous it is? Ah! However, what he said is not wrong. Up there, we can't say that we can get whatever we want, but we are not an existence that can be killed at will. I didn't expect that in the underground world, with our Jinyuan restricted, we are so vulnerable. Even a mosquito or a python can kill us. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have joined in the fun. What's the point of saying all this? The most important thing is how to leave. Voila! Amidst the chaotic battle, a 300 meters long python suddenly emerged from the bottom of the lake. Rather than calling it a python, it was more like a giant loach. It had dorsal fins from its head to its tail, and its tail was like a dragon's tail. The dragon whiskers by its cheeks were crystal white, and they were 50 to 60 meters long. When it opened its mouth, its dense teeth were completely different from a python's. When it flicked its red tongue, 3 to 4 people were sucked in, including the almighty spiritualist. No! He reacted and slapped his opponent's head. However, this ferocious python, which had lived for countless years, had extremely strong defenses. The palm strike that contained martial will merely caused its head to tilt slightly, and it did not suffer any damage. Instead, it became increasingly infuriated and swallowed its prey. Run! Everyone snapped out of their shock and rowed with all their might towards the other end of the lake. After swallowing 3 to 4 people, that ferocious python was still not satisfied. It chased after them with the other pythons, flipping over a boat and eating the astral-reaching realm warriors on it. Master Jade River could not stand it anymore, so he stood at the back of the boat and performed another profound sense martial art that he had created himself. Great Jade Cut! Under the guidance of Fong Xingjian's martial will, several tens of streams of water flew out from the lake. These streams of water condensed into thin rope-like blades that interweaved with each other like a huge net, encompassing toward the numerous pythons and that huge ferocious python. Shoo! 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 The master-level martial will was extremely powerful, and with the support of the water stream blades, its power was released to the extreme. Besides the fierce python that looked like a loach, the rest of the pythons that were covered were all torn apart. None of them could fight against it at all. However, the fierce python was not having it easy either, as a huge net of cuts appeared on its body. Blood kept pouring out of it, dyeing a huge part of the lake red. Demon Cut! The Demon Master had also attacked. He twisted his arm, and a curved blade shot out. The edge of the blade cracked on its own, turning into a tooth-like shape. It sliced through the wound of that fierce python. Swoosh! Blood gushed out like a waterfall in a jagged pattern. The upper half of the fierce python slid down diagonally, dying a violent death in an instant. Master-level warriors are indeed powerful. They are still so powerful even without Jin Yuan. Everyone who had noticed this scene was shocked. They now had a new understanding of master-level warriors. The lake was not that huge, but without Jin Yuan, they had not reached the end of it even after a week. The lake was still so far away. On a piece of land, a lake was connected to a long river in the middle of the land. The long river divided many unique and wild buildings into two. At the riverside, a young man with golden fur was squatting there, his palm brushing the python's head. There are outsiders coming this way. Outsiders, you will die. The majestic young man spoke in a broken human language, which sounded a bit awkward. Old Man Sky Eagle laughed, he can actually speak our language. Although he only knows a few words, there must have been someone who came down before us. Master Jade River nodded, since the underground world exists, it must have communicated with the outside world. It is not strange at all. The majestic young man was indeed Goldwind Saint's son. His gaze swept through the crowd, pausing on Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River for a while. Then, it landed on Yi Chen. He seemed to feel that Yi Chen was not simple. He sneered, and disdain flashed in his eyes. Finally, his gaze shifted to Murong Qingcheng. Breathing slightly hurried, Goldwind Saint's son said to the priest elder beside him, I want this woman. Don't kill her. Saint's son's eyesight is not bad. This outsider woman has a good temperament, perhaps even above the saintess. The priest elder on the left grinned. The priest elder on the right said, why don't we bring her back to be our saintess? Today, I want her. As for the others, I will kill them all. Goldwind Saint's son's eyes flickered with intense desire and killing intent. He raised his hand high and waved it down. Although the crowd did not know what he was talking about, they could tell from his eyes and actions that things would not end well. Damn, they all treat us as prey. Do they really think we are easy to bully? Slaughter them all. Kill. There was no need for any provocation. Including Yi Chen, everyone's heart was filled with killing intent, and their eyes gradually turned scarlet red. Swish 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 swish. The first to attack were Goldwind Saint's son's group. Their weapons were spears that could be thrown. Under the support of their thoughts, the spears pierced through the air at a speed that surpassed the speed of sound, tearing apart the air and covering everyone. Go back! Anger flickered on Demon Ancestor's face. With a wave of his palm, his master-grade martial will gushed out. Pang! Suddenly, the priest elder on the left side of Goldwind Saint's son made his move. A mental hammer smashed through Demon Ancestor's martial will, making it impossible for him to block the spear. The next moment, 3 or 4 astral-reaching experts couldn't dodge in time and were sent flying by the spears. Ding 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 ding, the bright sword light danced in the air, bouncing off at least 1/4 of the spears. Behind the sword light was Yi Chen, who was dressed in blue. Right then, he did not plan to hold back much of his power. If he continued to be killed like this, everyone would be killed, which was why this scene had happened. Chapter 433. Oh! Interesting. He was actually concealing a part of his strength. Goldwind Saint's son distinguished his strength based on what he had seen and heard. For example, when Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River joined hands to kill Elder Sacred Snake, this scene was seen by the messenger Sacred Snake, who informed him. As for Yi Chen, he was merely equivalent to an ordinary Sea of Soul Realm expert and wasn't particularly outstanding. Now that he had erupted, his strength had doubled. It was impossible for him not to attract attention. Glancing left and right, Goldwind Saint's son said, I'll leave the 2 who killed Elder Sacred Snake to you. There should be no problem, right? Saint's son, rest assured. I, Sang Qing, will make sure they never return. The priest elder on the left revealed a sneer. Goldwind Saint's son was the saint son of the Billowing Saint tribe. His talent and perception were impeccable, and his potential was huge. Therefore, although he wasn't weaker than Goldwind Saint Sun in terms of strength, his status was much lower. In the tribe, the Saint Son and Saint Daughter were only below the Patriarch, and their status was extremely high. Bayan, will certainly kill them. The priest elder on the right closely stared at Master Jade River. Goldwind Saint Sun nodded, very well, make your move. Hearing these words, the priest elder named Sang Qing pounced toward Demon Ancestor. With a thought, an incorporeal consciousness armor condensed on his body. In his left hand was a shield flickering with a silver light, while in his right was a three-pointed, double-edged spear. Although subterranean humans didn't cultivate Jin Yuan, because they cultivated body-tempering techniques, their physiques were formidable. Their movements were as fast as thunder, as if an ancient mammoth was charging at the enemy at full speed. Courting death. Demon Ancestor's right hand tightened, and a 4-foot-long curved blade appeared in his hand. The curved blade had a thick back and a thin edge. With a wave of Demon Ancestor's right hand, a cold light flickered, and the air was immediately sliced open. Ding! The two exchanged blows for the first time, and they were evenly matched. Your opponent is me. Seeing that Sang Qing and the Demon Ancestor had started fighting, Bayan was unwilling to fall behind. His hands danced like a net, creating many afterimages. In the next moment, the sky-covering intent net enveloped the Jade River Spirit Master, layer after layer. The Jade River Master narrowed his eyes and activated the Great Jade Spiral, which was propelled by his martial will. He protected himself in the center and allowed the net of will to envelop him. As for the others, they had been fighting for a long time. However, in comparison, the underground humans still had the absolute advantage. In terms of long-range attacks, the underground humans' mental power was the deciding factor. The long spears they threw out could easily pierce through the bodies of astral-reaching realm warriors. In close-range battles, the underground humans' physical strength was not something astral-reaching realm warriors could compete with. They were like beasts in human form, extremely powerful. However, the people from the outside world were not completely useless. In terms of battling techniques, the underground humans could not even catch up to them. The two were not even on the same level. Murong Qingqing's opponents were 3 underground humans. These 3 people were different from the other underground humans. They weren't in a hurry to take Murong Qingqing's life. It seemed that they had some plans. Ever since Murong Qingqing condensed the embryonic form of her martial soul, she could already use her martial will to enhance all aspects of her qualities. However, when faced with the intangible will, she couldn't end the battle quickly. To be able to die by my hands is your honor. Goldwind Saint Sun walked toward Yichen step by step, his expression extremely relaxed. As far as he was concerned, personally dealing with Yichen was like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. However, since he had nothing better to do, why not have some fun? Yichen couldn't understand his opponent's words, but it didn't mean he couldn't see his opponent's contempt. He stood in place without moving, his back straight like a sword about to be unsheathed. The sharp aura of a sword artist pervaded the surroundings. Goldwind Saint Sun sneered and suddenly raised his hand. Puchi! An incorporeal will blade brushed past Yi Chen's neck, leaving behind a 100-meter-long scar on the ground. As for why it didn't hit, it wasn't because Goldwind Saint Sun was lenient, but because Yi Chen tilted his head at the crucial moment, narrowly avoiding the attack. Not bad. Goldwind Saint Sun curled his lips. You take a sword attack from me as well. Yi Chen didn't care if his opponent could understand him or not. The destruction sword was unsheathed instantly, and he slashed upwards, causing a bright sword light. Boom! Goldwind Saint Sun had underestimated Yi Chen in the end. He didn't expect Yi Chen's sword attack to be so fast and unexpected. Without enough time to dodge, he could only arrange an indestructible will barrier in front of him, which was then quickly thickened and widened. The invisible sword light condensed from the destruction sword intent clashed with the will barrier, causing the ground to crack and crack. The surrounding trees cracked into pieces, turning into ashes. Goldwind Saint Sun himself was caught off guard and had to back out dozens of steps before he could neutralize the impact of the sword intent. Swinging his palm, he glanced at his left shoulder, where a piece of golden fur had been shaved off. Bits of hair were fluttering in the air, and his face looked terrible. "Very well, you've finally piqued my interest. I wonder how you're going to block this next attack." Goldwind Saint Sun's expression turned serious. Yi Chen wasn't as easy to take care of as he had imagined. Of course, he still hadn't considered Yi Chen as a formidable opponent. He was just a bit more serious. "Metal Storm." Goldwind Saint Sun opened his mouth and shouted. The air in front of him was immediately expelled, and countless will blades shot out like a torrential storm without any pattern. Clang! 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 Yi Chen shattered the will blades one after another. Because of his fast sword speed, it seemed like he had only attacked 3 or 4 times. In fact, he had attacked at least 17 times, and each sword attack would cut apart a straight line of will blades. "Bastard, die for me!" The ground under his feet collapsed. Goldwind Saint Sun took a step forward, and as he did so, more will blades were formed. With a single point as the center, they started to spin crazily, creating a horizontal tornado made of will blades. The tornado had a cone-shaped tip, attacking towards Yi Chen at a high speed. Sky Thunder Cut. Holding the destruction sword with both hands, Yi Chen used his destruction sword intent to push out his best and sharpest attack, the Sky Thunder Cut. With a single sword attack, it seemed like the world was being torn apart. The tornado made of will blades was split into 2, causing Goldwind Saint Sun's attack to fail on the verge of success. Impossible! How can his sword intent be so powerful? Goldwind Saint Sun's expression finally changed. In the Billowing Saint clan, he had condensed his martial spirit a year ago. Once his martial spirit was formed, his will was equivalent to a Sea of Soul realm expert in the outside world. Moreover, after the will was transformed into will, its offensive power would increase by several folds. It was definitely not inferior to a master-level martial will. If Yi Chen could block his full power attack, wouldn't it mean that his sword intent was at the master level? To have a master-level sword intent in his 20s was simply unimaginable. At least in the history of the underground world, such a person had rarely appeared. The mental attack from Goldwind Saint Sun had slowed down their thinking. High-density thoughts. Yi Chen's heart tightened. The strength of Goldwind Saint Sun was truly not to be underestimated. If this thought attack landed, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. But that doesn't mean it has no weaknesses. His willpower was condensed into a ball, which had the most destructive power. But, it was also because it was a ball that it could not be perfectly executed. Pushing his soul power to its limit, Yi Chen threw out a sword attack at the weakest point of the ball-shaped willpower, which was the most unstable and imperfect place. Pop! The sphere of consciousness dissipated and blasted a large pit. Goldwind Saint Sun's extraordinary strike did not pose much of a threat to Yi Chen. It was like a thunder roaring but a raindrop falling. Seeing that the first strike was effective, Yi Chen took a step forward and slashed out a second time before Goldwind Saint Sun could. Puff! Spurting out a mouthful of blood, Goldwind Saint Sun flew back with a pale face. Saint Sun! Sang Qing and Baiyan were shocked. They were very clear about Goldwind Saint Sun's strength. He was definitely not weaker than them, and could be ranked in the top 10 of the tribe. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become the #1 expert of the young generation of the Billowing Saint tribe. But now, he had been defeated by a blue-robed sword artist who was even younger than the Saint Sun. The two wanted to help Goldwind Saint Sun, but Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River were not easy to deal with. Their attacking power might be weaker than Yi Chen's, but their speed and defense were horrifying. The two could barely maintain the situation, so how could they escape? Shoot! The number of people brought by Goldwind Saint Sun surpassed Yi Chen's group in the end. Seeing that Goldwind Saint Sun was in danger, Some of them took out short spears from their backs and threw them at Yi Chen. Yi Chen did not disregard the short spears. His defense could be said to be his weak point. It was worse than any Sea of Soul realm expert who had condensed a marshal's soul. With the amplification of his consciousness, even if these short spears could not kill him, they could still heavily injure him. It was not worth the risk. The destruction sword brandished several beams of light, chopping down all the incoming short spears. Yi Chen slightly bent his knees and suddenly shot up. In the next moment, a huge crack appeared where he was just a moment ago. The soil around the crack turned into dust, and the attacker was none other than Goldwind Saint Sun, who had been beaten to the point of vomiting blood by Yi Chen. With the support of his subordinates, Goldwind Saint Sun was able to withstand Yi Chen's attacks. He seized the opportunity and took advantage of the time when Yi Chen was exhausted from dealing with the short spears to quickly condense his consciousness attack, wanting to catch him unprepared. He truly didn't expect Yi Chen to react so quickly, easily dodging his killing blow. Puff 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 puff, dodging Goldwind Saint Sun's sneak attack, Yi Chen did not immediately charge forward and fight a life-and-death battle. Instead, he followed the inertia and floated near the group of subterranean humans that had besieged him. With a shake of his right hand, a sword light shone brilliantly and blood splattered. Psyche Cage. Seeing Yi Chen killing his subordinates as if he was chopping vegetables, Goldwind Saint Sun clenched his teeth and created a psyche barrier around Yi Chen, wanting to trap him inside. Then, he would gather his subordinates and launch several volleys. However, just as the psyche cage was formed, Yi Chen walked out with sword steps. That thin psyche barrier simply couldn't bear his casual sword strike. Too powerful. Is he still an astral reaching expert? Yi Chen had killed a lot of subterranean humans, and the more he killed, the more he saved a few astral reaching experts. These astral reaching experts, seeing Yi Chen slaughter the subterranean humans so easily and tear apart Goldwind Saint Sun's ace attack, couldn't help but be stupefied. In their eyes, even Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River weren't this fierce. Even Master Grade Sword Intent couldn't explain Yi Chen's power. Breaking away from the psyche cage, Yi Chen's figure flickered and suddenly appeared in Murong Qingqing's direction. One of the people surrounding Murong Qingqing glanced at him from the corner of his eyes and was greatly alarmed. However, before he could say a second word, his throat was slashed, and he died without any hesitation. The other two were somewhat alarmed and wanted to move closer to Goldwind Saint Sun. However, Murong Qingqing's eyes and hands were sharp. She shot out like a butterfly and slammed her palm on the chest of the person on the left. With a gotcha sound, the chest of the person struck caved in. Blood and minced meat spurted out of his mouth. He immediately suffered a life-threatening injury and lost all his battle strength. The other person was overtaken by Yi Chen, who had a strange footwork, and his neck was pierced. Yi Chen was just about to deal with Goldwind Saint Sun when his soul power sensed a large group of people advancing at high speed. The leader's aura was incomparably powerful. Merely his gaze gave off a soul-tearing oppressive feeling. A peerless expert is coming. Faintly changing their expressions, Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing sucked in deep breaths and raised their speed to the limit. In a few blinks of an eye, they were already 1 li away. Goldwind Saint Sun thought of something and roared, "Don't let a single one of them escape." Yes. Under the amplification of his will, each step he took covered 200 to 300 meters. As he caught up to the Sea of Soul realm experts, he waved his palm, and a frightening will storm instantly crushed them to death. There's a conveyor gate on that mountain. Hurry! At this moment, speed was life. If they were not fast enough, they would be caught by the white-haired old man sooner or later. With the means of killing Sea of Soul realm experts in an instant, even if they joined hands, they wouldn't be his opponent. Yi Chen pulled Murong Qingqing's hand. His sword intent surged to the limit, bringing the two with him. Chapter 435. Flawless. The white-haired elder's willpower was unbelievably powerful. With a thought, 2 huge mental power webs were formed instantly, blocking in front of Yi Chen and the others. It seemed like they were about to close up. Yi Chen frowned. The white-haired elder's wool net could not be mentioned in the same breath as Goldwind Saint's sons. It looked like a huge net, but in fact, it was covered by a thin layer of wool without a single gap. Apart from that, these two wool nets were not just one layer, but 3 layers. If the 3 layers were stacked on top of each other, then it would be fine. However, these 3 layers were unique, intertwining with each other without any connection point. Yi Chen was very clear that it was impossible to cut open the wool net in a short time. By the time he did so, the white-haired elder would have already caught up. Therefore, if he wanted to live, he had to break through the 2 wool nets before they closed. If he was one step slower, then he would die. Thinking up to here, Yi Chen's forehead swelled like a diamond bead. The sword soul embryo in his soul sea blossomed with halos one after another. Surging sword intent swept out like raging waves, wrapping around Yi Chen and pushing him forward at an extreme speed. At this moment, Yi Chen's sword soul embryo was fully activated for the first time. How could Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River not see how frightening the wool nets were? They also did not have the confidence to tear them apart in an instant. After all, martial wool was still inferior to sword wool in terms of offense, and the difference was not just 1 or 2 levels. Wind Escape. As a master-level expert, Demon Ancestor had created 2 profound sense martial skills. One was Demon Chop, and the other was Wind Escape. As for using Earth as Sky, it was not created by him. Instead, he had cultivated the profound sense martial skills of his predecessors. Wind Escape, as the name suggested, was a profound sense movement art. Demon Ancestor had only created it in the past 10 years. Although he had lost his Jin Yuan and could not display the essence of this movement art, he did not have too many thoughts about it at the moment. With a flash of the grey whirlwind, the figure of the Demon Ancestor disappeared. Master J-Driver's reaction was not slower than Master Demon's at all. The profound movement art he had used was 1,000 li in one stroke. One could tell that it was extraordinary just from the name alone. In fact, this movement art was indeed extraordinary. It was only a step away from the mid-grade profound, and was at the peak of low-grade profounds. The Jade River Spirit Master's figure paused for a moment, and his speed became more and more exaggerated. There was no obstruction along the way, and even the naked eye could not catch up to him. Xiao! Yi Chen brought Murong Qingcheng and broke through ahead of time. At this moment, the mental power net was about to close up. Just when the 2 mental power nets were about to close up, the Demon Ancestor slashed them apart and rushed out of the blockade with Master Jade River. The white-haired old man's face darkened when he saw this scene. He didn't expect that his all-out attack would still allow the 4 of them to escape. If they were allowed to enter the sacred land through the teleportation gate, where would the billowing saint tribe hide their face? One had to know that this had happened once a year ago. The white-haired old man stretched out his left hand and clenched it. Puff! At the same time, the 2 spiritual power webs merged together and formed a circle, completely trapping Old Man Sky Eagle, Daoist Black Snake, Daoist Ironwood, and the others. Under their despairing gazes, the spiritual power webs suddenly shrunk, squeezing them to death. At this point, only Yi Chen and the other 3 were left in the underground world. They had suffered heavy casualties, and even the Daoist masters had died. They were less than 50 miles away from the mountain peak with the teleportation gate. In the past, 50 miles would only take 2 to 3 blinks of an eye for a grandmaster. Unfortunately, in the underground world, they couldn't break the speed of sound no matter how hard they tried. There was a huge difference. Shoo 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 shoo, Goldwind Saint Child and the other 2 kept attacking Yi Chen and the other 3. Mental power blades, spears, and hammers rained down like a torrential storm. If not for the fact that the distance between them wasn't too close, the chances of the 4 escaping was less than 30%. Even now, they were still in a precarious situation. 40 li. 30 li. 20 li. Seeing that the 4 were about to reach the peak, the white-haired old man took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Seems like we have to get serious." Hearing this, Goldwind Saint Child and the other two were shocked. They couldn't care less about attacking Yi Chen and the rest, and frantically retreated. At the same time, they set up layer after layer of mental power barriers, as if something terrible was about to happen. Taking a deep breath, the white-haired old man suddenly roared out loud. With him as the center, a shapeless mass of consciousness began to spin unbelievably, like a rolling snowball. The scope of the consciousness storm grew larger and larger, and the spinning power grew stronger and stronger. It seemed as if a void tornado that connected the sky and the earth had risen in the void, spreading rapidly in all directions, affecting the surroundings. Not good. Demon Ancestor and Master Jade River were behind Yi Chen and the other two, and were the closest to the white-haired old man. As soon as the mental power tornado formed, they felt a suction force sweeping over, reducing their speed. Chapter 436. The Holy Land was not the Holy Land of the Billowing Saint clan, but the Holy Land of the first layer of the underground world. It was said that it was closely related to the Holy Land of the second layer. A year ago, Serenity was supposed to be married to a powerful saint son of a saint clan in the second layer of the underground world. At that time, she and that outsider young man had just left the Holy Land, causing the Billowing Saint clan to lose a lot of face. The Holy Land was very dangerous. If the underground humans entered, they would most likely die. No, not even 1 out of 100 would survive. However, what made the underground humans puzzled was that the chances of outsiders surviving in the Holy Land were much higher. At least, there were many examples of that. The greater the danger, the greater the benefits. The Holy Land had existed since the ancient times, and contained many secrets and treasures. Every 100 years, the Billowing Saint clan would organize a team to enter the Holy Land, and so would some of the surrounding saint clans. This time, it had not even been 100 years. Being alone, the white-haired elder did not dare to enter. Head elder, did they enter? Goldwind Saint's son and the other two flew over. The white-haired elder said expressionlessly, "This matter is over. Let's go back." No matter how unwilling he was, this mission had failed. Count them lucky. But, I wonder how long this luck will last. Who knows, the next time we enter the Holy Land, we might see their statues. Goldwind Saint's son said coldly. Woo woo woo. Woo 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 woo. The black gale blew everywhere like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Everywhere it passed, it would let out a woo woo sound, and the towering mountain peaks would be shaved off. The moment Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing appeared, they saw a gust of black wind blowing over. The two subconsciously strengthened their defense. What surprised them was that the Jin Yuan that had been compressed in the deepest part of their dantian broke free and formed a layer of protective Jin Yuan outside their bodies, firmly protecting them. The Jin Yuan here is not restricted. Murong Qingqing said after resisting the black wind with some difficulty. Yi Chen said, "My spirit power is still being suppressed." No wonder they did not catch up. When the spirit power was suppressed, the soul would also be suppressed. Once the soul was weakened, the will would naturally be affected. As for how much the will was suppressed in the underground world, Yi Chen did not know. Pitter-patter. As the black wind collided with Yi Chen's protective true essence, it issued a continuous series of explosive sounds. A faint feeling of dizziness suddenly appeared. Yi Chen finally noticed the black wind. After carefully identifying it, he said, "This is the soul-scattering astral wind. It is an astral wind formed from the combination of metal origin energy and dark origin energy." Courting death. The demon ancestor sneered. Being chased by the white-haired old man had always annoyed him, and he had been wondering where to vent it. With a wave of his blade, dozens of sawtoothed blade chi crisscrossed. The centipede was instantly dismembered, its flesh scattering in all directions. While the demon ancestor had dealt with the Black Mountain centipede, Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing were besieged by a group of 7th-grade ancient demonic beasts, snake-scaled wolves. The snake-scaled wolf was a mutated demonic beast. Its body was like a wolf, but it was several times bigger than an ordinary wolf. It was more than 2 meters tall, and it had no fur on its body. Instead, it had scales that flickered with dark blue radiance. These scales were very small compared to its huge body, only the size of a thumb. However, it was precisely because of this that the densely packed scales of the snake-scaled wolf had a very high defense, comparable to some 8th-grade demonic beasts. From time to time, the snake-scaled wolf would spit out a ball of black light, bombarding Yi Chen and Murong Qingcheng. Green Lotus Chi Transformation. Like a porcupine, countless sword chi shot out from Yi Chen's body. After a round of attacks, a large number of snake-scaled wolves died. With Yi Chen's strength, not to mention a large group of 7th-grade demonic beasts, even a large group of 8th-grade demonic beasts would not be able to do anything to him. Just as the two of them were about to eliminate all the snake-scaled wolves, the remaining ones seemed to have sensed something and ran desperately in a certain direction. Yi Chen did not think that the snake-scaled wolves were afraid. He had killed so many of them before, but they were not afraid at all. Following the gaze of a snake-scaled wolf as it turned around, Yi Chen turned his head to look. On the horizon, a layer of black chi was moving towards them. The speed of the black chi was extremely fast, allowing Yi Chen to clearly see its appearance. Rather than calling it black chi, it would be more accurate to call it black mist. This black mist that covered the entire mountain was like a ghostly mist, from which ghostly wails and wolf howls could be heard. Faintly, Yi Chen could see many blurry human faces and human bodies, as well as the vague silhouettes of some demonic beasts. Wherever the black mist went, the demonic beasts that were hidden in the depths would be swept out. Their bodies would rapidly decay, and a mass of light would merge into the black mist. Soul Devour. Yi Chen's complexion changed. Not caring about hiding anything, he took out his flying puppet from his storage ring. Yi Chen had 2 flying puppets, a leopard puppet and a rock puppet. The leopard puppet was equipped with mid-grade spirit stones, while the rock puppet was equipped with upper-grade spirit stones. This way, he could change them at any time at a critical moment. At this moment, Yi Chen took out the rock puppet. "Get on!" Leaping onto the back of the rock puppet, Yi Chen said. Murong Qingcheng was somewhat astonished and quickly jumped on. Swish! With the upper-grade spirit stones as the driving force, the rock puppet's speed was as fast as an aurora. In 2 or 3 blinks of an eye, its speed had increased to 5 times the speed of sound, then 7 times the speed of sound, and then 10 times the speed of sound. It was as fast as lightning, leaving all the snake-scaled wolves behind. "This is an upper-grade flying puppet?" Murong Qingcheng asked. Yi Chen nodded. "I found it in the ruins of a puppet sect branch. Its maximum speed is 10 times the speed of sound, comparable to ordinary Sea of Soul realm experts. However, it consumes upper-grade spirit stones. The black mist speed was at least 6 or 7 times the speed of sound." The snake-scaled wolves were overtaken without any leeway to resist. Their bodies decayed one after another, and their souls floated out. The scene was extremely spectacular and horrifying, as if they had arrived at a hellish world. Half an hour later, the two of them rode on the giant rock puppet and traveled 25,000 miles away, leaving the soul-devouring black fog far behind. Putting away the rock puppet, the two landed on the ground. As far as the eye could see, it was a wilderness overgrown with weeds. Strangely, they could see a stone statue every few meters. These stone statues were either standing, sitting, lying on the ground, or buried in the soil. They didn't know if it was an illusion, but the expressions of the stone statues were vivid and lifelike, as if they had a mind of their own. Their originally expressionless faces all had a hint of a strange smile. They don't look any different from the statues in the Stoneman Array. Yi Chen recalled that the Stoneman Array had fallen into the underground world together with the Undying Altar. There might be some unknown relationship between the two. Kacha! When he passed by a half-buried statue of a stone man, a few cracks suddenly appeared in the soil beside the statue. Murong Qingqing cautiously said, "There's something inside the statue." As soon as she said those words, the statue broke out of the soil. A cold smile appeared on its stone face as it twisted its arm and punched toward the two. Heaven's rebuke. Morong Qingqing's palm met the attack, and the statue was knocked back dozens of meters by the repulsive force. Kacha! 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 The surrounding stone golem statues all came to life, and the smiles on their faces were either eerie or demented. If it wasn't a cruel smile, it wouldn't look like a normal smile. It gave off a chilling feeling, and it was incredibly evil. Sky Thunder Cut. Yichen didn't dare to be careless. He threw out his most powerful sword attack. The sword light was like snow as it cut down 7 or 8 statues in a straight line. Some people couldn't comprehend the sword's soul. Apart from the comprehension ability, it was also related to the soul. The soul could only accept ordinary sword wills, so it would be hard for one to have an elemental sword will. Morong Qingqing's martial will had smoothly transformed into the demonic will, which meant that she was naturally suitable for the demonic Tao. Chapter 438. Without thinking too much, Morong Qingqing focused her attention on the black jade. It was shining with a soft light, and it was very warm to the touch. As she poured in her Jin Yuan, a picture suddenly appeared in her mind and started to play. On the crimson wasteland, a real demon floated under the crimson moon. The demon had black bat wings on its back, 2 horns on its head, and silver pupils. There was no skin on its body, only a layer of armor. The demon was more than 2 meters tall, and from its appearance, it looked no different from a human. However, at a glance, there was only one feeling in the depths of one's heart, and that was that it was strong. It was not strong in terms of strength, but strong in nature. It seemed to be a powerful existence that was above humans. In front of the demon was a human in a black robe. If the demon was a natural demon, then this black-robed man was a postnatal demon. There was a black aura lingering around his body. This aura seemed to have a spirit, wisp by wisp. Boom! The evil demon with bat wings on its back chopped out with a hand blade, and a dark light covered the sky. Suddenly, the sky was shattered, and the earth cracked. Soul-extinguishing wave. The black-robed man raised his head, and his eyes revealed an arrogant and domineering look. He shook his palm, and the same black light condensed into a ball, which then shot out in a fan shape. Its power increased continuously, and not only did it cancel out the evil demon's attack, it even sent the opponent flying hundreds of miles away. In silence, the evil demon seemed to have lost its soul, and its body fell from the sky without a trace of injury. Morong Qingqing, who was still in shock, tensed up. In her mind, the black-robed man smiled at her, and the fan-shaped light drowned her thoughts. Yichen did not disturb Morong Qingqing, who was still motionless. He had the experience of receiving profound sense martial arts, so he knew that during the process of receiving information, his mind would be in a mess, and he would not be able to wake up for a while. If he disturbed her forcefully, it might hurt her spirit. After a long time, Morong Qingqing opened her eyes. So, the soul-extinguishing wave is a low-rank profound sense martial art, and its attack focuses on the soul. If the soul defense is not strong, no matter how strong the body is, it would be useless. Yichen was slightly surprised as he said, a low-rank profound sense martial art that focuses on soul attacks. This is almost equivalent to a normal mid-rank profound sense martial art. The soul was different from the body. It was extremely fragile. If an ordinary Sea of Soul realm expert were to grasp the soul-extinguishing wave, they would be able to kill a Taoist or even a master-level expert. Of course, this Sea of Soul realm expert would also be instantly killed. Hiss! No matter how he hit it, there was no damage at all. This left him completely helpless. Rumble! The stone statue punched out, and the wind from the fist scraped off layer after layer of the ground. Een Demon Chop! Een Demon Ancestor raised his blade and went up. One statue and one man fought for hundreds of rounds, but they could not do anything to the other. In the end, Demon Ancestor had no choice but to give up and use Earth as sky to knock the statue down. He then used the Wind escape technique and quickly left this place. One day and one night. After flying for a whole day and night, Demon Ancestor finally got rid of the statue. The other party's speed almost made him collapse. Fortunately, it was still a bit slower than him. After a whole day, that bit of speed increased to tens of thousands of li, and there is a huge mountain range in front. On the plains, Demon Ancestor looked at the distant mountain range. It was very different from the mountain ranges outside. The mountain was black, and the sky was also black like night. However, outside of the mountain range, it was a dusky day. The two formed a sharp contrast. Let's go in and take a look first. Just like Yi Chen, the Demon Ancestor did not have the urge to get the undying body anymore. Of course, the undying body was placed right in front of him. He just wanted to leave the underground world and return to his own world. Otherwise, he would not be able to guarantee his own survival if he continued to stay here. No matter if it was the underground humans or the stone statues, they both made him feel extremely tired. Swish! Increasing his speed to about 8 times that of sound, Demon Ancestor carefully entered the mountain range. In the depths of the mountain range, 2 figures were flying. They were precisely Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing. With the demonic will and the devil's soul embryo reaching the critical point, Murong Qingqing's speed was not much inferior to Yi Chen's. Her combat power had even doubled. Her gains could not be said to be small. There's something strange over there. Murong Qingqing's vision was extremely powerful. Even from thousands of li away, she could see the abnormality in the center of the mountain range. That area was filled with a layer of faint white light, as if there was a huge source of light. Let's go over. Yi Chen had also seen it, and his speed had increased by 30%. After a quarter of an hour, the two arrived at the place where the light was shining. The scene in front of them surprised them a bit. What entered their eyes was a vast valley filled with white light. Although it was called light, it was actually a bit like fog. To be more precise, it was countless rays of light entangled together. These rays of light were extremely twisted and wriggling unceasingly. Throwing a stone in, and seeing that there was nothing strange, the two operated their protective Jin Yuan and walked step by step into the valley. The white rays of light made contact with the protective Jin Yuan soundlessly, and there was no effect at all. However, the two could feel that the white rays of light and protective Jin Yuan had made contact. Moreover, there seemed to be some interaction between the two, as if they wanted to fuse together. After walking for dozens of li, the two saw an altar, an enlarged version of the Undying Altar. It was 100 meters tall and 400 meters wide, with 6 pillars that looked like they could support the heavens, reaching all the way into the pitch-black sky. The white rays of light were seeping out from these pillars. However, the higher they went, the darker the light became. The surface of the altar was the most dazzling. Undying Altar, it should be the Undying Altar. I didn't think there would be an Undying Altar here as well. Yi Chen carefully examined it and could confirm that this altar was exactly the same as the one he had seen when he first entered. The only difference was probably the size. Arriving near the altar, Yi Chen found another beam of light shooting out from the center of the altar, shining on the opposite rock wall. The rock wall was as smooth as a mirror, just like the wall of a god. It was grand and vast, emitting a boundless ancient aura. Meanwhile, the light was shining on a hollow in the center. Surrounding the hollow were many human-shaped pits of different sizes. The big ones were around 100 meters, while the small ones were only a dozen meters. In front of the rock wall was a stone stele. On the stele, there were 4 ancient characters, Undying Rock Wall. Could there really be an undying body? Undying Altar, Undying Rock Wall, and the pits on the Undying Rock Wall. Yi Chen seemed to have thought of something, but at the same time, he didn't seem to have thought of anything. He only knew that he needed to remember something, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to solve it. Murong Qingqing said hesitantly, don't you think that the size of these pits is the same as the statues in the stonement spell? Yes. They are the golem statues. With Murong Qingqing's reminder, Yichen immediately recalled that these pits were about the same size as the golem statues, even their shapes were similar. In order to solve this puzzle, they would have to replace the golem statues that fell from the surface. However, that rainforest was too far away from here, and the two of them had no way to get out, let alone bring them here. How could they accomplish their goal? Forget it, let's see what mysteries this undying altar has. Yichen focused his attention on the undying altar. Looking at the base of the altar, Yichen saw an inconspicuous crack. This wasn't a crack caused by damage, but a crack formed by two objects sticking together. The altar seemed to be able to rotate. Clatter clatter. Placing his palm on the edge of the altar, Yichen pushed it in a certain direction. Just as he expected, the top half of the altar slowly rotated, and the light emitted from the center of the altar began to change colors. Chapter 439. 3 colors. 4 colors. When the radiance changed from single to 6 colors, the entire undying rock wall started to tremble. Shortly after, a radiance was emitted from the human-shaped crater on the wall. This radiance was so penetrative that the surface of the wall turned transparent, as if it was a huge piece of 6-colored unpolished jade. In the next moment, the undying rock wall shone brightly, illuminating the surroundings. The pitch-black sky instantly turned white, and halos spread out continuously. What's going on? Demon Ancestor raised his head and looked at the center of the mountain range. Outside the Holy Land, in the rainforest of the first layer of the underground world, the stone statues that had fallen from the surface suddenly trembled. All of a sudden, all the stone statues left the ground and flew towards the Holy Land. Along the way, the stone statues suddenly disappeared into the void. This scene was witnessed by the Greenwood St. Clan's clansmen. They thought that they had seen a miracle, and their mouths were wide open. The stone statues didn't go through the conveyor gate, but directly broke through the spatial layer and arrived in the Holy Land. A strange thing happened. The stone statues in the Holy Land seemed to have sensed the invasion of the foreign stone statues. All of them revived and roared furiously in the direction of the flying statues. Some of the closer ones even chased after the stone statues and attacked crazily, giving off a horrifying feeling of killing each other. Pang! 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 The foreign stone statues blossomed with a resplendent radiance. All the stone statues that came into contact with the radiance instantly crumbled, and their undying bodies lost their effects. The stone statues flew at a very fast speed, appearing and disappearing in the void. In almost a dozen blinks of an eye, they arrived at the Radiant Valley, and then arranged themselves in a formation in the air, embedding themselves into the human-shaped pits on the undying rock wall one by one. Originally, the radiance of the undying rock wall had illuminated the heaven and earth. However, when the stone statues returned to their positions, the radiance quickly retracted and concentrated inside each statue. Complicated patterns appeared on the statues' bodies, and these patterns connected with the obscure patterns on the undying rock wall, forming a complete map. The radiance then followed the map to the center of the undying rock wall, right above the hole. Rumble. A dull sound rang out, and a long stone was pulled out. Although the stone was not gold, it emitted a golden light that was purer than gold. Through the slightly transparent golden stone, Yichen and Murong Qingqing could see that there was a scroll sealed inside, a golden scroll. The golden light was emitted by the scroll, and had nothing to do with the stone. Golden Scroll. Yichen was in the middle of the golden light ball, and his emotionless pupils turned golden. If one observed carefully, one could see that there were many strange characters in his pupils. These characters were too small, and were constantly rearranging themselves. The moment the light ball was formed, Yichen had already recovered his ability to think. He was startled, and only checked his mind after realizing his current situation. It is indeed the undying body. It is the undying body scroll. The cultivation secrets of the undying body contain too many characters. The first ones that were arranged correctly were the ones at the front. After they were arranged, Yi Chen could finally confirm that the golden scroll was indeed recording the undying body. However, the undying body seemed to have been separated into two scrolls, and he had only obtained the first one. As for whether there was a second scroll or not, it was still unknown. Soon, the characters were also arranged properly. The undying body scroll has 3 levels. The first level is flesh healing. Any wounds without any defects can be healed in an instant. The so-called wounds without defects were wounds that did not harm the foundation. For example, a cut on the body would be considered as wounds without any defects. However, if an arm or a leg was broken, it would not be without defects, but the foundation would be damaged. The first level would not be able to heal the foundation. The second level is limb regrowth. Severed head, severed arm, and legs can be healed in an instant, but it consumes life yuan qi. The more serious the foundation is, the more life yuan qi it consumes. If the life yuan qi is insufficient, it will not be able to heal completely. Once the life yuan qi is exhausted, limb regrowth will lose its effect. Limb regrowth didn't need to be mentioned. As long as one wasn't crushed into meat paste or split into too many pieces, one could recover. However, limb regrowth was different from flesh healing, as it consumed life yuan qi. What was life yuan qi? It was a person's innate yuan qi. Under normal circumstances, life yuan qi was very difficult to increase, and the gap between qi realm and astral reaching realm was not that big. However, from the astral reaching realm to the sea of soul realm, life yuan qi would suddenly increase by several folds. After all, after reaching the sea of soul realm, one's body would no longer be an ordinary body, and life yuan qi would naturally be incomparably powerful. The third level is flesh regeneration. A piece of flesh can be regenerated, but it consumes a huge amount of life yuan qi. Without enough life yuan qi, the regenerated body will be in a weak state, and the degree of weakness will depend on the amount of life yuan qi. The life and death realm undying body had a total of 3 levels. The first was limb regrowth, the second was flesh regeneration, and the third was blood rebirth.